Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. So this is the movies, not the J.R.R. Tolkien novels. And for that reason, I'm not going to talk that much about the themes. Because most of the important themes of Jackson's film trilogy would be derived from the Tolkien novels. And there's been a ton of commentary about the themes of Lord of the Rings anyway, both the books and the movies, so I'm not going to spend that much time on it. There's just a couple of things I do want to say. One is, for me, the real hero of the movie is Samwise Gamgee, or the real hero of the movies, I should say. Everybody else, almost without exception, in the films is like, my heroism is sword, stabby, stab, or axe, or pew, 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 arrows. I know that's not how you fire arrows, but I don't care. I was making the pew, pew, pew sound, so you've got to do it that way. Almost everybody else in the film, their version of heroism is fighting, killing, destroying. Sam's version of heroism is very, very different. It is, listen, bro, you got to have a hot meal. You got to get some good sleep. Stay away from toxic people like Gollum. And his sort of great line toward the end, I may not be able to carry the ring for you, but I can carry you. Sam is a caregiver, and he is, for that reason, in my opinion, the most important hero of the film, precisely because he's not always, I've got to go fight, and that's how I'm going to prove my bravery and prove my manliness and that I deserve to be the king of Gondor and whatever kind of shit. He's like, listen, I'm going to be there to support you, and I'm going to sacrifice, and I'm going to be there for you. And you know what? I'm not even mad that Frodo and Sam don't kiss. I'm just going to say it. I'm not even mad. There's several moments where they clearly should have. But you know what? Peter Jackson, you do you, boo. It's still a great love story. And that's the thing, is it's Sam and Frodo. I'm not that big a fan of Frodo, if I'm honest. He's kind of whiny. And I get it, the One Ring destroying his soul and all that stuff. Fine. I'm on board. But largely because of Sam's dedication, even though this is not sexual, not romantic necessarily, this is still a great love story. And I think one of the great things that it proves is that you can have a great love story that's about simply being in an interpersonal relationship. That's simply about supporting one another and being there for one another. Even in cases where that support, that being there involves the conflict over Gollum and whether or not Frodo should trust this character. There are some very heated arguments because Sam sees things in a different way than Frodo does. And Sam is trying to help. And so again, I think that's a great sort of model for friendship and for love. This idea of, I want what's best for you, especially when you're suffering and you're not necessarily able to think clearly about what is and isn't best for you. So that's my hot take. Samwise Gamgee, #1 hero. My other hot take on the movies, before I get to them, to the things I actually want to talk about, which is the cinematography. I don't like the ending of the movies. The Eagles thing is whatever. A lot of people have a problem with that because, why didn't the Eagles just fly them to Mordor thing? Fine, I accept that criticism, and I accept the explanation that you've got ring wraiths flying around on their crazy fucking dragon things eagles are not necessarily going to be all that subtle and clandestine. Whatever, I'm fine with it. What I have a problem with, actually, is the whole, oh, Mount Doom is having a volcanic eruption because we've destroyed the One Ring, hashtag spoilers. And Sam and Frodo are just like, whatevs. We've climbed out onto this rock. There's all kind of lava flowing around us, and we're just gonna lay here. We'll have a little nice chat and stuff. No, because the thing is, it doesn't work that way. Like, I don't know that much about volcanoes. I'm not a volcanologist by training. You may or may not know, but like the thing with volcanoes is they give off tons and tons and tons of toxic fumes. So, like, archaeologists who have investigated the preserved ruins at places like Pompeii and Herculaneum that were destroyed by Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, one of the things that they've determined is that most of the people there were actually not killed by the lava or by volcanic ash or whatever it is. They were killed when a massive cloud of toxins comes rolling down the mountain at like beyond the speed of sound and just like sweeps through the cities, and people die of suffocation. They die of inhaling these toxic gases. So the idea that Sam and Frodo are just like, oh, we're chilling on our rock, not at all being destroyed by the fact that lava that's hundreds of degrees, or I don't know how hot lava is, but lava that's like hot enough that it's going to destroy anything it touches, that's like flowing 3 feet from us. And we've just been in a volcanic eruption. We're not getting overwhelmed by toxic gases or anything like that. No, I'm not on board with that. I don't accept it. And that's probably more an issue with Tolkien than it is with Peter Jackson. But I don't accept it for whatever that rejection is worth, which is nothing. But the thing that really strikes me, or that struck me as I was rewatching these films just recently, is that Jackson is really, really good at using contrasts to effectively create thematic resonance visually. Obviously, I think the big one here is light versus dark. Like, there's tons and tons of scenes where we have darkness versus light. And this is very obviously thematic. For instance, when Gandalf fights the Balrog, he falls, he dies, etc., etc. Then in the second movie, The Two Towers, he comes back. And he comes back as Gandalf the White. And when we're introduced to Gandalf the White, what happens is they're in the dark forest. What is it? Fangorn Forest, I think. So they're in this very, very dark forest. They've been sort of... this is Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas. They've been sort of trying to find where Merry and Pippin have gotten to. It's a whole shtick. But they're in this dark forest. And they're confronted by the White Wizard. And at this point, the only White Wizard that we know of in the movie and that they know of is the villain, Saruman. Is it Saruman? No. Yeah, Saruman is the... I think it was a mistake in Tolkien's approach to make the two primary villains named Sauron and Saruman, because they're very, very close in terms of the names. So it is what it is. But anyway, so that's the only White Wizard we know of at this point, is the villain Saruman. The three companions, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, draw their weapons, prepare to attack the White Wizard, and then poof, blinding white light, their weapons are cast aside and whatever it is, and light like the sun, except white. So we have that stark contrast between the darkness of the forest and the light of Gandalf as he returns. There's a number of other places this contrast between light and dark shows up, and we've got switching back and forth. So that's one of the really cool things about it is there are like in the scenes where we have strong contrasts between light and dark, things light dim, the darkness grows brighter, and things shift back and forth. It's not a simple opposition, it's a fluid opposition. And this is, of course, thematically resonant because light is often taken as a representation of success or victory, enlightenment, the triumph of good over evil, etc., etc. Whereas darkness, blackness, night is associated with evil, with defeat, with the Dark Lord, Sauron, etc., etc. So we've got these thematic resonances that are played out visually on the screen through the contrast of light and dark. But also, again, it's really important that these are not stable and static oppositions. As things move back and forth, we have played out that sort of the fluctuations of Middle Earth, almost. This idea of the war going back and forth. Neither side clearly has a major advantage, etc., etc. So we've got those interesting contrasts. But the other set of contrasts that struck me is between broad, sweeping, panoramic camera angles and ultra close-ups. Like so in film studies terms, for those of you not familiar with this distinction, there's a difference between the close-up and the ultra close-up. The close-up tends to be like a person's head. It's not always that, but it tends to be a person's head. So we're focused on facial expression, we're focused on their emotions, we're focused on their reactions to something, whatever it is. We're looking, again, about this much space generally. An ultra close-up moves in even closer than this. And very commonly, ultra close-ups will be the eyes. Because the eyes are extremely expressive and they can reflect fear, they can reflect desire, they can reflect recognition, whatever it is. With Peter Jackson, with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, that's not what his ultra close-ups tend to be of. There's two major things that I noticed that he tends to focus on. One is hands, particularly hands with jewelry in them. Whether that's the One Ring, where we get a ton of shots. I guess it's actually, Frodo puts it on his left hand. But we get a ton of shots sort of like that. I'll take this ring. Sort of like this. Like close up on this. And the reason we do that, the reason we get that is because that's a way of creating tension. The other big one that we get is Aragorn's little elven medallion thing. That we often see that in characters' hands. And this is all about creating tension because these are deeply symbolic artifacts, but also because hands are very expressive as well. So one of the reasons for doing these ultra close-ups is expressivity, but another reason is because the ultra close-ups are about detail. So when we have Frodo like this, when this is what we're seeing, this is about the detail of that moment, the detail of whatever fear it is that's driving Frodo to potentially put on the ring, as well as the stakes. And that's being conveyed visually through this ultra close-up, where The hands, the ring, are pretty much the only things that occupy the screen. The other thing that we have ultra close-ups of that really struck me is mouths, especially Gollum's mouth. We have a number of scenes of just this section, often with him like biting into a fish or an animal or something like this. But then we also have some ultra close-ups of other characters' mouths. And again, mouths are another very expressive part of the body. And so that makes a lot of sense. But the other thing that we have in the film, apart in contrast to these ultra close-ups, we have these wide sweeping panoramic shots of mountains and valleys and things like this, shots of whole armies and stuff like this. And these do the opposite of what the ultra close-ups do. These give us a sense of epic scope. And I think the fact that Jackson utilizes both of these and utilizes them really effectively, I think is an incredibly important thing about his cinematographic practice. Because you think about some other epic movies, you think about something like Braveheart, which came out a little bit earlier than the first of the Lord of the Rings movies. Braveheart is known for its sweeping panoramic shots. We get these great vistas of the Scottish countryside and things like this. The mountains, the highlands, and things like this, as well as battle scenes. But we don't really get that many ultra close-ups. So we get a number of close-ups, but we don't really get that many ultra close-ups that are really hyper-focused on detail. And so Jackson's use of these two opposite spectrum techniques, the panoramic shot and the ultra close-up, I think is a really important technique, because it gives us these contrasting views, and these two different views give us contrasting types of information between the broad sweeping epic and the hyper detailed focus on individual characters and experiences. So these types of contrasts, both of light and dark and of different types of camera shots and things like this, Jackson is a master of using both of these. He's a master of using these contrasts to create meaning very, very effectively on a visual level, apart from even the questions of the narrative and the storyline and character development and things like this.